The Force of Others, a Star Wars podcast. Hello there, and welcome to The Force of Others. I'm Zachary Owen Turner.
I'm Matt Poitner.
And we're back, episode 11. I was cut off my hand.
Dangers of lightsabers.
Yeah.
Don't try this at home, kids.
We're back with another episode of The Force of Others. We have a wonderful little bit of news for you, and then we're going to finally answer a bunch of mailbag questions that we have been putting off because we have been getting some good content, and so we've been a little bit busy, but we are going to finally jump into that today. But first, Matt, how was your Star Wars week?
For the first time in a while, I had a nice, full Star Wars week. Got lots of Star Wars in my life. Well, I say lots, and then I'm going to say like two things. But I had a little more time to just kind of nerd out. So I finished an audiobook, which is a rarity for me. I'm really good at starting an audiobook and then forgetting about it, opening Audible a month later and going, right, where was this story at?
Yeah.
But I listened to Darth Maul Shadowhunter. So it was a Legends book that I do actually highly recommend. It's a good, light, just fun little story. It's Darth Maul immediately before Episode 1 hunting down a Trade Federation turncoat, basically. Someone that basically does not want to be a partner of the Sith anymore and is going to try to go public. And so Maul is dispatched into the underworld of Coruscant to hunt down this guy and kill him.
Cool.
And then a Jedi apprentice and smuggler Han Solo type get caught up in his wake. And the best thing about this audiobook that I can recommend is it's read by Sam Witwer.
Oh, cool.
So when he's doing Maul's inner thoughts, when he's doing Maul's dialogue, of course, you get the Darth Maul impression. And it's so good. Really, really loved it. Really loved it. Highly recommend.
Nice.
And then the other big Star Wars thing, for actually the last 3 weeks in a row, I've gotten to play the Star Wars role-playing game.
Nice.
Woo! And we ended, I structure my role-playing game in volumes, right? We finished Volume 2 on Friday of this last week. And the way that Zach knows this a little bit, is I have GM'd for him. Mm-hmm. But I like to run my Star Wars role-playing games as a kind of an alternate version of canon, but it's alternate because the players have the ability to change things. Like, they have agency, they can do whatever. I just ask them, please don't be dumb and kill Palpatine because you know who he actually is because you've seen the movies, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so long story short, they prevented the Clone Wars.
Oh.
They got, it was a whole thing, but they got a holo recording of Dooku and Sidious basically talking about it in detail, and they were able to get to this super secret, like galaxy-wide broadcasting thing. It was very much like the Serenity, that movie. I realized towards the end, I was like, that's where I got this idea. But anyway, so they broke into this super secret base, and were fighting clone troopers. It was a whole thing. Because whatever. Anyway, like I said, alternate timeline, but then they sent out this message as the Separatists were shipping off to war in this alternate version, and then the galaxy found out that Sith Lords are behind all of this, and basically stopped the war before it started.
Wow.
But yeah, one day I would love to have our podcast get taken over by some Star Wars actual play, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, because Zach and I, if we were going to do that, we'd want to do it right, and that would take some monies.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's my very long explanation of my Star Wars week. Zach, how was your Star Wars week?
Yeah, honestly, wasn't very Star Warsy. It was one of the few times I was really busy this week. I got to play Survivor a little bit. Got to the utmost reputation with the Crimson Dawn. Why I'm wearing my Crimson Dawn necklace, and you get this really cool outfit that's like all Crimson Dawned out. And now I'm working towards getting up with the Pikes, because when you get all the way with the Pikes, you get an Imperial ISB outfit that you can wear and just basically walk around Imperial things without getting detected, because you look like you're in uniform. And then, yeah, I still haven't gotten off the first planet. I really want to get to Tatooine. I watched this video of this guy fighting a crate dragon, and I was like, that's cool. Because apparently when you're on the dunes, the crate dragon like comes after you like Jaws. So look forward to that when that happens.
Yeah, man, I look forward to getting really unproductive once that Christmas bonus rolls in and I buy a PlayStation 5 and some new Star Wars video games.
Well, you gotta buy Survivor first and then Outlaws, because...
Yeah, but what if I want to play Outlaws now?
Okay, maybe.
Okay, cool. All right, let's get into some news. We found some news this week.
Yeah. So there's some news coming out of LA Comic-Con, a panel at LA Comic-Con. Ewan McGregor was mentioned that they are exploring the idea of continuing Obi Wan Kenobi into a second season. He also confirms that he wants to wear the Clone Wars armor and hopes to collaborate with Hayden Christensen in more prequel-era flashbacks similar to those featured in Season 1. But I would say similar to those featured in the Ahsoka show, because they did that armor, and that was perfect.
Yeah.
Matt, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, we talked about it, if I remember right, literally last week, or it might have been the week before.
Yeah.
Either way, where kind of my take was, I don't know what Obi Wan Kenobi story there is left to tell. He has conquered his demons. He's gotten over all of his PTSD from the Clone War and stuff, and from his failure with Anakin Skywalker. The biggest thing that's left is to learn how to be a Force ghost. But to hear Ewan McGregor say that he wants to wear the Clone Wars armor, that made me get very giggly and fanboy. Hey, we're Star Wars fans, and shock, Star Wars fans like more Star Wars, so I will always say yes. I would hope that there is a story that there is a meaningful story that they would have to tell, and it not just be, oh man, look at Ewan in the Clone Wars armor, it's so cool. Even though that is what I will say regardless. So whatever. That's my non-take, where I will watch it, but I don't know what there is really to do. Yeah. Zach, what do you have to say?
I mean, it's not a huge shock, I think. The first season did pretty well for them, and Ewan seemed to have a good time. Hayden had a good time. Hayden, I think I saw we might have mentioned it a couple weeks ago, he's like, yeah, if Ewan's involved, I'll do it, So I think it's a no-brainer monetarily. Story-wise, I gave my pitch, I think, a couple weeks ago, where it's, him being a Force ghost, like learning how to be a Force ghost. But I think in that you could go like full trials of the past, and be like, okay, cool, we're just gonna, like, every episode is half him in Tatooine focusing on how to be a Force ghost or talking with Qui-Gon, and then the other half is flashbacks to the prequels, and like the lesson that he learned there, and be like, remember, you learned this lesson back then, So that's my pitch for it, but we'll see.
Well, and that could work, and that would be really kind of doubling down on what we said last time we talked about this, doubling down on it being like the Book of Boba Fett, where it's kind of jumping back and forth through time, but hopefully a little better. I liked that show, but it had its problems for me. I think for both of us. But, you could do something very, very similar to Ahsoka, like we said, which is it's his trials, But anyway, all that to say, I am wary, but I'm excited. But like we've talked about previously, you want to talk about sure things. You put Ewan McGregor and Hayden on screen, and you get Tim Morrison to be old clones. That's all good stuff. The only hitch in my giddy up to get real Texan about this is you could see it on screen in the Kenobi show that they did not have a very big budget, or that most of the budget got eaten up by getting them all back on screen together. And that was, if you're going to do it, you're going to need to give it an Andor type budget. For otherwise, it's going to look kind of hokey because we know they're not going to do Clone Wars flashbacks without de-aging them, and that can't be cheap. Yeah. And I don't want it to look like Mustache Gate, and neither do they. You know, or like the Luke Skywalker from Mando Season 2, right? Everybody likes to make fun of the Book of Boba Fett Luke, but Mando Season 2 was, well, man, that is transparent that he was not there. But so anyway, so if you're going to do it, give it the money to do it right. And with everything else that they've said about how we're only probably going to get one streaming show a year, Ahsoka isn't coming till 2027. Or I'm sorry, till 2026. So this would be at least 2027 before we get this. And we still don't know what Star Wars Pirates is. So who knows? Who knows? But you know who doesn't know how to do things? Studios. No, I'm just kidding. So there's an article from Variety that is going everywhere right now that the biggest takeaway is it is about toxic fandoms. This isn't a new thing, toxic fandoms, but the biggest takeaway is that studios have formed and are forming superfan focus groups, quote unquote, and this is to combat all of the toxic fandom stuff. I liked this article overall. The biggest point that it makes is the difference between, good faith dislike of something. I didn't like it. And, like, review bombing and just rage baiting and getting all of your followers to hate it. And hating it for reasons that don't make sense. But we don't even have to get into all that. We've talked about all that to death on this podcast. But the quote about the superfan focus groups and what they do, they're very vocal, says the studio exec. They will just tell us, if you do that, fans are going to retaliate. These groups have even led studios to alter the projects. If it's early enough and the movie isn't finished yet, we can make those kinds of changes. So, Zach, thoughts on superfan focus groups and their ability to impact narrative?
I mean, I hate it. I hate it so much. I mean, like, you gotta, like, how many times have studios been like, we're gonna let artists be artists and make their own story, and then you gonna bring in superfan focus groups, and then they're gonna be like, hey, that creative decision that the artist really wants to do, no, we don't want that. And then, like, it's almost making art too commercial. I mean, I know these are all meant to make money, but it's still supposed to be an art form. For goodness sake, like, you gotta trust the people you're gonna trust and, like, take the swings. If you make, I mean, how many times have fans been wrong about something? Like, if George Lucas had a superfan focus group when he was making, the original, 1977 Star Wars, they would have probably been like, well, it's too long, and oh, Luke knows how to do everything right away, and who's this Obi Wan guy? He's old. I don't know if I like him. Like, what if you get the wrong people in there? What if you get, like, I hate it. I hate it. You gotta let artists be artists, and like it or hate it, you gotta let it grow.
Well, the fundamental question here to me, and this goes back to everything you mentioned with George, and George's tinkering with the special editions, all that stuff, right? Is it the job of a storyteller to tell a story that the listeners want? Or is it a job of the storyteller to tell the story that they want to tell? Right? Yeah. And in my opinion, the answer is the second one, and it's not even really a discussion, right? Yeah. And coming from two people that went to college, essentially, to be storytellers.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that I have learned in, I don't even know how many years of being a nerd and being a fan of narrative and a fan of fiction, I don't care what anybody says, there is no right and wrong. My favorite movies, there are other people I know that are really intelligent, that have very wide taste. They hate those movies.
Yeah. For
lots of reasons. It only comes down to you. There is no objective. There is no objective way to measure a film. Most movies that win Oscars, I watch and I'm like, wow, I find that quite boring. Not all of them, but a lot of them. You know, there's a fly in my studio space. Nate, don't edit it out. Keep it real. Anyway, there is no right and wrong. And so to give some benefit of the doubt here, right? You know, there are always focus groups. There are always screen tests. There's studios always and forever have sought more input than just them. Because in my opinion, it takes a community to make something, especially to make art. Yeah. I've talked about it on the show a lot. I direct shows a lot. The theater, obviously nowhere near as big budget as a Star Wars movie, but even in that tiny, 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 like little microcosm of creativity, I don't make decisions without consulting other people.
Yeah.
Right? Including fresh eyes. Never underestimate the value of fresh eyes on a creative project, because when, you know, they've written something and they've edited it and they're sitting in the editing bay every day just watching the same stuff, making decisions, never underestimate the power of someone that hasn't seen any of it to come in and go, oh, well, what if you tried this, this, and this? Because they're just seeing it for what it is, not for the process it's gone through. Anyway, all that to say, I do think this is terrible.
I mean, can you imagine if you got a certain very, very vocal, very famous Star Wars podcast and YouTube creator on that focus group?
Yeah, and not to incur the wrath of anybody, but at the end of the day, I would hope that the superfans that are being sought after are the people that are not toxic in their fandom.
Yeah.
And again, the article makes the distinction between people that have critiques and that don't like things, and the people that make it their identity to hate things.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that comment on our videos, our tiny little channel of 95 subscribers as of this morning, calling us Disney shills and so on and so forth, and getting mad about all kinds of stuff. And I don't even want to get into that life is easier when you like things, but life is a lot easier when you don't make it your personality to go on to other people's content and tell them that they are objectively wrong for making it. If you are convinced that your opinions are correct and other opinions are incorrect, you're a moron. I don't know what to tell you. That's stupidity. That is next level egotistical nonsense, right? So to that point, make focus groups, get more input. But Matt Colville had a really good take about this. Shout out. I don't know him personally, but running the game. If you at all want to get involved in these role-playing games that we talk about a lot, look up Matt Colville running the game. Even just watch the first couple episodes on YouTube. The first 2 or 3 are really all you need to be a game master. But he talked about how in the 70s and 80s, when all the movie studios failed and got bought out by corporations for the first time, these corporations did the same thing. They started to form focus groups, and they started to get normal people to come in and give their opinions. And they failed. They failed miserably. The reality is, these corporations that are in charge of art, they have to do something, even though they know it's not the right thing to do. Because if they do nothing, then that acknowledges that they are in many ways pointless. It is their job to produce the art, right? Now, the other side of letting artists just be artists is, I'm going to say it, you get The Last Jedi.
Yep.
Which
you
really
get The Last Jedi.
Right. Really, and I've said
Polarizing.
It before. At the least, very well made, very well written, very well directed. Took a lot of, in my opinion, tried to fix something that wasn't broken, while also, and then in the last 30 seconds, saying that, nah, Star Wars isn't broken. Which to me, so why did you make this really beautiful, like, art house exploration as to whether or not it needs to be fixed if you don't think it needs to be fixed? Right? And then because of that, you get the overcorrection when which sounds like you watch that movie. It's the first draft of a 1990s EU novel, right?
Yeah.
Before they're like, okay, let's pick one of these 75 stories we've crammed into this movie. Anyway, we have descended into rambling, or I have descended into rambling and nonsense. But all that to say, as much as we're hating on the superfan focus groups, I'd like to be in one. That'd be fun.
That would be fun. But I would also be like, this is just my opinion, guys. Like, please don't, like I could be wrong.
Oh, I would treat that. I would treat it as a job interview, straight up. I'd be like, hey, man, how about this, this, and this? Also, I have Star Wars ideas. Have never published anything, but
almost. You got close.
It was a whole thing. One of these days, I'll have time. But anyway, so we talked about it to death. Superfan focus groups.
Speaking of superfans, I'm a superfan of Jedi Survivor Fallen Order series, and apparently, shocker to no one, the third game is going to be the last one. I don't think this is a shock at all, because it has set up such beautifully in the first two games a 3-arc act, because the first one is A New Hope, the second one is very much Empire Strikes Back. Not to spoil anyone for the other podcaster who hasn't played it,
dude,
but
go for it.
Dark. It gets super dark. And then the third one, who knows what it's going to be. But also, news has come out, I think through leaks, that Cal Kestis is rumored to appear in live action. To me, this is a no-brainer when you look at the actor, because Dominic Moynihan is fantastic. Dominic Moynihan, I believe, is his name. Let me double-check.
Yes.
Cameron Moynihan, not Dominic.
Oh, wow.
Cameron
My bad.
Moynihan. Fantastic actor. He's 31 years old. Like, get that dude, he's prime for, going into to film Star Wars for the next 20 years. That being said, the end of the second game, I don't know. I don't want to spoil too much.
Spoil it.
Okay,
Go for it. It's fine.
The overarch of the game. Okay, here, hold on. First off, full spoiler alert for the second game of.
I mean, the game came out like for a while, 2 years ago,
but
man.
Still, if you haven't played it, skip like maybe a minute and a half. But I'm going to spoil a little bit. The game is about. They find a way through ancient Jedi High Republic technology to find a way through this nebulous star system onto a planet on the other side, and nothing can get into the nebula without the ancient wayfinder, basically, kind of a la the Rise of Skywalker. And they realize, this is a place where we can take Jedi, like from the path in Obi-Wan, and we can give them their own planet that's safe away from the Empire. So it kind of sets up like, hey, the third game's probably going to be about them finding different Jedi that survived Order 66 and other rebels and or people that don't want to be under the Empire's rule, and getting them to a safe space, a la the Lasat in Rebels. It's very similar to that, where it's a star system thingy. So it kind of feels like his story will end there, leading that area, So to bring him into the shows, I'm very curious how they do it, and I think they have to finish the games first. I think you gotta wait to bring him in, especially at the age that he is, because I think Cal Kestis is maybe 20, 25 at this point. So finish the third game and then bring him in, But I think it's a no-brainer. He's a great actor. He does so good in those games. Such heartfelt. And he does, in the second game, he has that, brush with the dark side, and you can use some dark side powers. So it is very much Empire, where it's okay, we're darker, we're more serious. We're playing with themes, and he's a little broken at the end of that game. So to bring him... I mean, the third game has to be Return of the Jedi, where you're finally winning over with the light, but I'm very curious to see what they do, and I don't really know what show they'll bring him into, unless it's Ahsoka or something that's kind of in the future, because the games are set during the late episode 3, early episode 4 time period.
Yeah.
So that's my thoughts on it, Matt.
Yeah, well, right on. I mean, you talk about not spoiling it. I know basically everything that happens in the game because I'm just always on Star Wars Twitter and Star Wars YouTube. But thank you for trying to be nice. I mean, I think it's going to be some type of Jedi Path show eventually. That's such an interesting concept.
Yeah.
And again, they have teased that Quinlan Voss is out there, and that there's a whole organization that's shepherding Jedi. I think he'll be on a Jedi Path show shepherding Jedi to Tanalorr. And that's going to be their way to have a bunch of Jedi, or to leave the story room open for a bunch of Jedi to be out there in the galaxy, even at the time of the sequels, and explain where they were. They're off doing other stuff at Tanalorr. That's the name of the planet that they go to, I think.
Also, the game sets up that there was an invasion fleet from the High Republic, so they could be facing off against the Vuluzan or,
Yuuzhan Vong or the Grisk or any kinds of thing. They're going to set up that there's other Jedi out doing other things. My pitch, this might not be... so you said something earlier. Let me back up.
Yeah.
You said that it'll be after the games are over. 100% for sure.
Yeah.
That's one thing that they're really good about in canon. They want to let whoever is currently in charge of the character finish what they're doing before they start doing other stuff. Again, so you leave all the avenues open for the game to change and develop, right? And it's probably still a couple years away. But here's my pitch. They have established that they have said, well, okay, I should say, it is a heavily rumored rumor that the Mandalorian and Grogu is the end of the Mandalorian and Grogu story, and that Din Djarin is for sure going to go on to be in other projects. What if Cal Kestis is on a Jedi Path show, teaming up with Grogu and other Jedi, getting them out of this galaxy into another to go do other stuff? Could even be that that's where Ahsoka and Ezra and Sabine end up. Yeah. There could be they could go into that other galaxy, going on completely separate adventures. And then years from now, we'll find out that they were also at the Battle of Exegol, right? That's my pitch, that they're going to set up in many ways what we thought the sequels would be. Those of us that have grown up Star Wars fans forever, where I'm not trashing on the sequels, but they're setting up the new Jedi Order.
Yeah.
Right? And it could also be that he might potentially be in Rey's movie. Yeah. Even just as a cameo. As just Master Kestis, right? Slap a beard on him, age him up a little bit.
Well, the question is, based off of the second game, is he going to have a mullet? Is he going to have a mustache? Is he going to... Because you could change all of his looks.
Yeah. Who knows? They'll pick one. They'll pick their favorite one.
Yeah.
Just slap a beard on him, make it gray, and you can pretend that it's been a bunch of years. And then, I have seen criticisms from time to time of Star Wars that more main characters should die. My pushback is that, again, all this stuff is based off the old Flash Gordon things. And you want to talk about surviving the unsurvivable on a weekly basis and having your story go on for decades?
Yeah.
That's what this is. These are myths. These are legends. And when you look at a character like Darth Maul, I think we can acknowledge that, yes, definitely served his purpose in Star Wars Episode 1. Could have been a perfect one-and-done villain. But when you put a character like that in the hands of other storytellers with other ideas, you get the canon version of Darth Maul, which is, as we've said, one of our favorite villains, if not our favorite villain. Right?
Definitely.
You can have these characters grow and change and evolve and become that much more interesting. So I don't see a problem with, from time to time, Star Wars characters going on and having more cool stories. So there you go. That's our stuff on Cal Kestis, and hoping that he gets to be used in other things. Now, speaking of things that did not get used, we've got unused prequel footage, or news about alternate prequel scenes. This came from an interview on Chris Castellani's YouTube channel that went everywhere because he interviewed Nic Gillard, the stunt coordinator and lightsaber choreographer of the Star Wars prequels. If you have ever done a lightsaber twirl in your life, you did it because of Nic Gillard, right? If you when we do lightsaber fights, we did them in the backyard when we were kids. When you're our age and younger, you weren't really doing the original trilogy ones, right? Where it's two hands and very blocky and whatever. You were spinning them around everywhere. You're doing the Obi-Wan spin.
Yeah.
The language of lightsabers, there is no one that has had a bigger impact than Nic Gillard.
Yeah.
But he talked about some different options or different ways that prequel scenes could have gone. The first one, and I want to talk about these kind of individually. I want to break them all down. Was that a alternate version of Anakin getting maimed, losing all his limbs, right? Was him fighting Obi-Wan, getting the better of him, and saying, and I quote, "I'm really sorry, you have to be killed," and then proceeding to try to cut his head off, and Obi-Wan deflects it and cuts off his arms and legs. And that Nick went on to say that he hated the high ground scene, absolutely hated it. And that him and other stunt people campaigned as hard as they could to get it changed. George was having none of it. And Nic Gillard went on to explain that he believes the scene in the final cut was Steven Spielberg's idea. So just breaking out this, there's a couple more we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
But just Zach, thoughts on I'm really sorry you have to be killed as opposed to it's over, I have the high ground.
I mean, if he had kept it in, it would have been I hate sand. It's really coarse, rough. I'm really sorry you have to be killed. Like, that is such a George prequel line, you know? And then you give it to Ewan McGregor and you're like, I'm really sorry, Anakin. You have to be killed. You know, like, make it great.
But it wouldn't even have been. It would have been given to Hayden. I'm really sorry you have to be killed.
Yeah. I think, I'm so glad that line didn't make it through it. I think it's interesting and understandable that he hated the high ground. I mean, it's such an iconic scene now because Ewan is just like acting the ever-living crap out of it. But I think from a fight choreography standard, I totally get it. I've done. I've gotten my certification trainings. That's pretty anticlimactic. To be like, we just had this epic battle, and then you're gonna stand on and be like, hey, look, I'm higher than you when we've literally been jumping, whoosh whoosh up and down. So yeah, for him to go, no, I can jump over you, makes sense. It's only after when we get like canon books like Master and Apprentice where you realize that Obi-Wan was only allowed to learn the basic form of lightsaber fighting, and that the reason he is so excellent is because he is the master at the basic core of fighting, that Qui-Gon didn't let him go on to learn these other styles until he really had mastered it. That you realize that, oh, cool, but that's them explaining it. Explaining George being like, no, he's going to stand up there and then he's going to jump over him and he's just going to raise up his lightsaber.
Well, and at the time in 2005, I mean, it was brutally made fun of. Again, as were most of just about everything about the prequels. Everybody likes to forget, but it was brutally mocked everywhere. My thing was always been, just like you said, the moment literally right before this, Anakin jumps off the falling tower going over the lava waterfall, easily jumps one, if not two football fields.
Oh, yeah, easily.
To land on this tiny little target, and then he can't jump like 8 feet over Obi-Wan's head. Which, it's fine. Just don't have your cool... I've talked about before that I like it when the Force is consistently inconsistent, but come on, man. Yeah. It's still a little much. So, yeah, I understand where he's coming from. And at the end of the day, though, I will take the what puts Anakin into the suit being his hubris. Yeah. Like, that is the right idea. You could have just done it a little more artfully than, it's over, Anakin. I have the high ground. Yeah. And because at the time I was like, what? Why? I don't... You underestimate my power. And I was like, I don't know about this. Yeah. Anyway, so there you go. So that's our thoughts on that. But other stuff, The original Sindralig duel. Sindralig is Nic Gillard's Jedi character. You see him very, very briefly in Star Wars Episode 3. He also shows up on the Clone Wars. It's one of those fun Star Wars things where the name is very transparent. Sindralig is Nic Gillard flipped around.
Nice.
But it sounds fun and Star Warsy.
Stu John.
So you see, yeah, exactly. And let's not even explain the Stu John thing. Just the real ones know. But you see Sindralig in Star Wars Episode 3 in the hologram of Obi Wan watching Anakin slaughter Jedi. Slaughter Jedi. Slaughter Jedi. Anyway, you see the hologram. Sindralig is like the swords master of the Jedi Order in canon. But originally, and this is dark, and I'm very happy this didn't happen. This is a Nic Gillard quote. Originally, Anakin stabbed a small girl through the throat and holds her by it while he grabs another one. It was nasty. Can confirm, I agree. It's made me think about the Acolyte and the move that the Stranger pulls, where he stabs one guy and then, like, force pulls another Jedi to shish kebab him.
Yeah.
But, you know, at a certain point, this is still a Star Wars movie. A little dark. So, Zach,
especially
thoughts on...
Little girl,
yeah,
like any child, honestly, like that would be like, no, it's already traumatic enough where he's like, Master Skywalker, what are we going to do?
Exactly.
And just like which, like, if you didn't know, Anakin, Hayden Christensen went, boo, when he filmed that.
Did he?
Yeah, which is why
makes the kid...
That's why the kid goes, oh. Because he's like I gotta scare him, but like I can't be too scary, you know. It's a little kid, you know. So he went boo, and the kid went oh.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That is, I had no idea. That's hilarious. Anyway, can pass up gratuitous violence in Star Wars in my mind.
Yeah.
But the last thing, would he return? And Gillard emphatically responded, "Of course I would."
Yeah.
That was new for me because I had seen something around sequel trilogy time where he was like, I mean. They never asked, so and I'm good. I'm going to do another stuff. I think at the time he was doing Game of Thrones. Because he went over there.
Yeah.
But, hey, I mean, there is a version. We get Obi Wan Kenobi Season 2. We go back to Clone Wars stuff. They get Nic Gillard. You might as well get the band back together one more time. I did see something where someone said that Sam Jackson... and Natalie Portman have both said that they would come back. I mean, the amount of de-aging that they'd have to do on all these people, but
I don't know.
if they want to come back,
Natalie
man,
looks pretty similar. She hasn't aged.
That's
she doesn't
true.
age. She's one of those Paul Rudd types.
Yeah, where it's like one day we'll find out they're a vampire, and it's like, okay, checks out.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's possible they all come back. But get Nic Gillard back for Kenobi Season 2 if you're going to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I saw,
okay.
just to add something too, because I saw some criticism online on one of our posts talking about the lightsaber battles. It's very important too to realize that in the prequels, they were not fighting with these. Yeah, they were not fighting with an LED lightsaber. It was literally a little thin strip here that was made of metal, and that's why they're able to go really fast. Also, it wasn't a metal hilt that had all this electronics. It was a rubber hilt or like very little metal, and they literally talk about how many... There's a really great prequel behind the scenes where they talk about how many lightsabers they break.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, I got this one and I broke it, and I got this one and I broke it. So... people talk about like, oh yeah, the battle of the prequel, you know, like the sequels don't have all that. It's because they're using this, man. You know, like and it's great for those scenes where you're close up and you get the freaking light on the character's face because you can actually see it. But for the other things, you know, it does slow it down a little bit. And so I think we need to give, you know, some of the sequel and modern lightsaber battles a little leeway because they're working with different devices. So, anyways, that's my little rant. I had to say that. So
Wait, so someone was trashing the prequel saber duels or the
no,
sequel?
the
saber
sequel.
duels?
They've been like, man, they need to get back to the prequel. Like, it was so quick and fast and all that. I'm like, yeah, of course it was. They were using actual fencing swords, basically. Like it was quick and you could whip it.
They're using pieces of metal that would bend.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, again, that's an easy one for me. The Jedi Order didn't come back.
Yeah.
Like, Kylo got trained by Luke, and so far as we know, Snoke was already like a human prune by the time they teamed up. So I don't know how much saber dueling he was going to teach him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, whatever. That looked like people that have learned on their own. They have not been trained by Sin Dralig and thousands upon thousands of years of Jedi mastery.
Yeah.
Right. There's my early morning voice squeak for you. Putting another blooper reel together as we speak.
Yeah.
But, okay, so
All right.
Zach.
So, some new comics came out. We talked about it. It was announced, 3-4 weeks ago? The Battle of Jakku, Insurgency Rising, and the Inquisitors. I have not gotten to read these yet, but Matt has, so I'm going to throw it over to you. Give us your reviews on these two things.
So that was the other thing that I got to do in my nice, full buffet Star Wars week. I got to read some comics.
Nice.
I waited until all 4 issues of Inquisitors 1 through 4 came out, and I'll talk about that one first. And it was fine. It was just exactly what you'd think it would be, in that it was Inquisitors hunting down Jedi, which was cool. You find out that there's this Jedi named Tensu Run, who this is in the years after Episode 3. He has banded a couple Force sensitives together, and he's trying to get the Order going again. What was interesting, I really liked the first couple issues, and then for the review, I did not like the final one. Because basically, it's that you meet these characters, and you find out things about them, and then Tensu is just whipping the Inquisitors. They could not hold his jockstrap. And he's like, whatever, y'all can't take me down. And so the story just culminates in Vader showing up and destroying him while the Inquisitors watch. And the Inquisitors learned nothing. Tensu learned nothing. It just kind of becomes, well, here comes the buzzsaw that is Darth Vader, and that's the end of the story.
Yeah.
Which was fine. It's them illustrating that the Inquisitors are nowhere near as good as an actually fully trained Jedi. The people that Palpatine was able to manipulate and twist were more than likely lower level disillusioned types.
Yeah.
Is what I get out of that. But I just thought the story, they didn't do, it felt like they threw away all of the themes and all of the stuff that they built up to just to, oh, well, okay, watch Vader kill him. All right, end of the comic. But then on the flip side, when we first talked about this Battle of Jakku comic book Maxa series, as it's being called, because it's 3 different 4-issue miniseries, I talked about how I am pretty much more excited for that than anything else happening right now, in at least in Star Wars publishing, and this first issue, for me, knocked it out of the freaking park. I absolutely loved it. This is exactly what we kind of have all wanted out of Star Wars canon, which is bring all those stories together from a certain era and tell a cool story referencing all of it. Nice. But there are so many great moments. We got, immediately after Return of the Jedi, Han and Leia get married. Cool. He leaves to go do stuff in the Aftermath books. You don't see the wedding because they talk about that in the Princess and the Scoundrel book. But you see kind of like the end of that, and then Han leaves to go be in Aftermath, right? In that novel. And Leia stays, and we see what she does, like, that night. She goes out to the funeral pyre of Darth Vader and basically just has this moment where we get to see what I've always wanted. How does Leia feel about all of this? Because 2 days ago, she found out not only is Luke her brother, Darth Vader was her father, the guy that tortured her for days, a couple times, and was directly complicit with the destruction of her homeworld. And basically, it's this really wonderful moment where she's like, I'm not Luke. I'm not a Jedi. I'm just a person, and I have feelings that I need to deal with, and that she just has so much anger. And Luke kind of can sense it, and he kind of calls her on it. She's like, "Did you follow me?" He's like, "No, but I could sense it and stuff." And he says, "Well, we could start training, and I could get you past this." And that's when she's like, "I'm not. I don't know. I need time."
Yeah.
But I absolutely loved it. We get the Acolytes of the Beyond coming back. There's just lots of deep cuts from all of canon, and it still plays if you haven't read it. But this comic book is putting together the Aftermath books with the Star Wars Uprising mobile game, and a lot of other just pieces of canon storytelling from immediately after Return of the Jedi. Yup Tashu, kind of the head of the Acolytes of the Beyond, with one of the worst names in this franchise, he shows up. And for anybody that doesn't know, here's a quick lore drop. The Acolytes of the Beyond were either non-force sensitive or mild force sensitive, like devotees to the dark side. Cultists, they're like obsessed with Palpatine and Vader. And they have kind of hinted at different times in canon that they might have had something to do with ultimately what was Exegol and all of those hooded dudes. There might have also been, whatever, all those hooded people on that planet. But Yup Tashu dispatches a woman, Askur is her name, to go deal with these rebels. And Askur is a Anzati, Anzati, which is a deep cut from Legends. She is a Force vampire. And when I read that she was an Anzati, I was like, let's go! I was so excited. That's one of the weirder things that I never thought they would touch on again. They've got these like tendrils that come out of their face and attach to your face and kind of essentially drain the midichlorians out of you, and they get power from that. I know, it's so weird and so fun, and make my Star Wars with extra pulp, please. I am very, very excited. They did not show that she has face tendrils. She's got some long hair. So we'll see. Maybe they're hidden in there, or maybe they'll just interpret it slightly differently. But and then the other big thing, they establish the bad guy, Grand Moff Adelhard, that his whole thing is he is not allowing anyone under his command to admit that Palpatine is dead. They're like, that's not true. We are not going to spread those lies, right? You can get into the very transparent real-world allegories of we're not going to admit defeat. But I don't want to steer any more into that than having said that. But also that there were things like that in World War II. Like that there's a great narration early in this comic of that, like, wars don't just end. They end in phases. And then oftentimes lives are lost between the drum beats of war, which I thought was just some wonderful writing. So I have praised it to death, but all that to say, I loved this comic book. I highly recommend it. Battle of Jakku, Insurgency Rising #1. And then it looks like they're going to put out every one of these comics every other week. So there's going to be 2 weeks in between. And then these 3 miniseries are telling the story of the end of the Galactic Civil War at the Battle of Jakku. So, yeah. All that to say, I loved it.
Just to shout out some lore from our past, Matt and I, when we were in college, used to go like every week and get the latest Star Wars comic or like a DC comic. But like there was a tiny little comic shop in Oklahoma City that was our little domain every week. But
Empire Strikes Comics.
Yeah,
I hope y'all are still out there.
Yeah, shout out to Empire Strikes Comics.
Actually, I feel bad. I moved away from Oklahoma City, and I realized, like, years later that I never canceled my subscriptions with them. And I was getting, like, every Star Wars comic that was coming out.
They probably stopped it.
I'm sure they stopped it, but I'd still feel bad. If y'all are out there and you are still there, let me know how much money I owe you. I'm sure it's a lot. I was a dumb college kid, so my bad.
Yeah. Cool.
But alrighty.
next up on the news, Matt, hit me with this one because I don't actually know anything about this, and I didn't get a chance to read it.
So it's just sticking with publishing. There's a novel called Mace Windu: The Glass Abyss, and it comes out next week. The premise of the story is essentially that this is shortly after Star Wars Episode 1. Mace gets a message from Qui-Gon Jinn that was intended to come to him in the event of Qui-Gon's death. That there's a planet that Qui-Gon had been trying to take care of and look after, and they need someone's help, and it might as well be Mace. There's an excerpt that I intended to read, and I did not. So, my bad, everybody. In my buffet of Star Wars, I forgot to read something that I was supposed to for the show. I skimmed it a little bit, and I've read some of the synopsises and stuff that they've been putting out. So I will start the audiobook next week when that comes out. If it ends up really, really sci-fi heavy, I might not finish it. We will see, but I will try. I'm curious about the things they're going to do with Mace Windu. And it sounds fun. There's something about the Glass Abyss. There's something about this planet and that it is, it's almost made of glass. But, yeah, so Zach, having known nothing about this other than that, you got any takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad it's not the return of Mace Windu after Episode 3, which is what I thought it might be. But I think that would have been bigger news, and I would have heard about it. Yeah, I mean, I'm down for some character growth from Mace Windu, because you don't really get a lot of it. He's just kind of a cool guy who really doesn't like Anakin, and then he's a cool guy with a purple lightsaber. Not to say that Samuel L. Jackson doesn't act wonderfully, but it's like the story does not give him very much character growth at all. So to see that will be cool. I'm excited for the exploration of that character.
Canon has kind of used him as the personification of, in many ways, the dogmatic nature of the Jedi in this time period and how that was kind of problematic.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm curious to get into this novel. It won't be Shatterpoint, the excellent Legends novel. It's a little dark. It's very, very graphic in terms of its like gore at times. But it's a real good novel. That one is we're plugging lots of books today. But if you're looking for a Star Wars book to read and you don't mind the heavy stuff, Mace Windu Shatterpoint is basically it's pretty much a Vietnam story, but starring Mace Windu, and so it's very, very heavy. But okay, the time has come for the rapid fire mailbag. We have let this build up. A lot of these are from the same people.
We apologize that we have let this build up to those people who have been sending in things. We appreciate all of your emails, and I don't know how you feel about this, Matt, but we might just be start responding to emails as well, because we have been getting behind.
I mean, I kind of want to do it. If it gets to that point, sure, but I kind of do want to do it on the show. And even if it's that we're doing like 1 to 3 per episode, we will get to it, everybody. If the show grows to a crazy degree, then or when the show grows, because we want all of you to send your friends as well.
Yeah.
I want to give you guys the spotlight that you deserve and answer your fantastic questions on the show. Yeah. But let's flip flop on this thing. So Zach, hit us with this first one.
Yeah, Matt, what is your favorite alien species in the franchise and why?
This is a hard one for me because I don't have a specific one that jumps out. Generally, the weirder the better. But the first one that jumped out to me, it seems easy, but Wookiees. I'm a sucker for a good Wookiee. And then the other one for kind of a deep cut Legends pull, the Nogri, which it's what Rook, Thrawn's bodyguard on Rebels. I didn't really like the way they showed him on Rebels. In Legends, they're these like super apex predators that you will not see them coming. Yeah. They're gonna be on you with knives before you even knew they were in the room, type thing. And I've always been kind of fascinated by that. But so Zach, what yours?
I love Zabraks. Whenever I would create a character in the Star Wars universe, it would usually be a Zabrak. If you don't know, that's Darth Maul's. He's a Dathomirian Zabrak. There's also Zabraks from the planet Zabrak, which are there's a Jedi Council member in the prequels that has him. He goes to face Palpatine and gets murked in like 2 seconds. So I love Zabrax. I also love Ardenians, which were the Jon Favreau monkey man from Solo, because he's so cool and he's got the 4 arms and like
Rio Durant.
Yeah, I really love that species. And then I had to shout out my favorite language from a alien species is Geonosian, because the I love that sound. Me and one of my roommates, former roommates, we used to make that sound all the time, just like randomly in the house. But yeah, those are mine.
Well, now we have subjected you with our versions of those sounds. All right, Zach.
Mm-hmm.
How many lightsabers do you own?
I have 3. I have a baselit Kyle Katarn lightsaber.
Cool.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was when I bought it. I just thought it looked really cool, and then later on I was like, oh, that's really sick. It's got like the brass and all that. I have a Ultra Saber dueling blade that are supposed to be very durable when you hit them with things, baselit as well. And then I have my pride and joy, which is this one. Been showing it off throughout the episode. It is Luke's lightsaber / Obi-Wan's, depending on which you look at it. But the cool thing about this one is you can change the colors.
Codex of Light.
And so it can change the different colors, different sound fonts and all that. So this is that's my baby. What about you, Matt?
Joy. I have 2. Mm-hmm. I similarly have a Luke Skywalker Return of the Jedi lightsaber, but I think it's just the Black Series 1, so it doesn't change colors or anything like that. But then my pride and joy, and I meant to bring it to show it to y'all today, and I forgot about it, so I'll post the picture or something. But was the lightsaber that I constructed at Galaxy's Edge earlier this year, which, if you have the means, I highly recommend it. Like it. Did I tell this story on the podcast before?
I don't know.
Well, if I did, you're gonna hear it again. It was so funny. It is truly cool. Like a lot of Disney World, now that we're grown, you're like, okay, all right, I get it. This is kind of commercialized, kind of kitschy. Like, it's fine. The lightsaber building thing got me. Man, they've got... I want that job, to be the actor that comes into the room and, like, lowers the hood and is like, greetings, my friends. I have been dreaming of your coming for some time. And then he goes into this whole wonderful speech about what the kyber crystals mean and how there must always be balance in the Force. So some of you must choose red. And I was like, that's not how balance works. And then, I blew up the whole thing. No, I'm just kidding. But it's just so fun. You get to pick your crystal. You get to pick your components for your lightsaber, and you get to build it. And then you've probably seen the videos, but there's a moment in like the experience where the lightsabers all look real for like a second. When you all turn them on, it's like a surprise, right? And I can see what's coming. But 2 people down, there was this kid who just lit up and started crying.
Aww.
And it was awesome. And then there's like frat dudes over in the corner that were kind of like making fun of the whole thing. But then when they were holding up their lightsabers, they were like, okay, this is pretty cool. I've got a video. I'll post it and stuff. But I love that. And I had to get blue. Wasn't even a discussion. My lightsaber was going to be blue all the way, bro.
Yeah.
For sure. But then a fun thing, how many lightsabers do you own? I was talking to my mom. For some reason, this came up yesterday in conversation, and she maintains that I had 17 as a child. And I was like,
I mean, the little, like...
Yes, and I was like, Mom, that is not true. I had 3, and then we kept buying them for my little brother, and we just kind of, now we have this like bin of half, most of them broken, fold out lightsabers from when we were kids.
Nice.
So, because I was like, I did not have 17 lightsabers. She was trying to like make fun of me a little bit. It was funny. Yeah. Love you, Mom. But okay.
All right.
The next one's you, right?
Next one, Matt. What is the cinematic purpose or theme for the transformation of Darth Vader and the birth of Luke and Leia being shown side by side?
This is a really deep, like, kind of weird, fun question.
I think this was your little brother who asked
This
Yeah.
was Mark. And so I'm going to kind of talk about some theories and then kind of my versions of them because there's been a lot.
Mm-hmm.
This is the end of Star Wars Episode 3,
Yeah.
right? Where Luke and Leia are being born as Anakin's being put into the suit and Padme's dying as Anakin is getting stronger. So a fan theory that I've seen a lot is that Palpatine is siphoning life force from Padme and giving it to Vader. Because her heartbeat, you hear it getting weaker as his is getting stronger. I don't necessarily think that's the case as much as I think it's just Vader's sadness and everything is giving him strength in the dark side, right? His rage is keeping him going, but Padme's sadness, because, you know, she's a healthy person, is weakening her.
Yeah.
Right? And ultimately it's what takes her. But really, I think, and then Freddie Prinze Jr. would say that them in his famous Star Wars rant that you can look up, that the twins being born at the same time Vader is being constructed, essentially, is the Force balancing itself. So that you have Palpatine and Vader and Luke and Leia.
Yeah.
2 and 2. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I do think that Padme was not pregnant with twins because Obi-Wan is surprised. They're all like, twins? What? I think a lot of Jedi got wiped out and the Force was trying to make more. So Luke and Leia were essentially, in many ways, I think they were a dyad.
Yeah.
And we might get that in storytelling at some point. But I think that the biggest theme here, or the purpose, is that as Anakin dies, his saviors are being born. Right? I think that Leia could have also redeemed Vader if lived differently, if had that opportunity.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think
what are your thoughts?
Very similar. I think it's truly showing the death of Anakin Skywalker. I mean, Anakin was all about trying to save Padme from death in childbirth, and when he dies as Anakin is when she dies in childbirth, because he fails. He fails because he is prideful and can't let it happen, can't let go. I think Jedi should have attachments, but I think it's his unwillingness to be able to deal with that, which, understandable. Especially if your partner is gonna die, you try to do everything you can, which is why he's so relatable as a character. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it's him, Anakin, truly dying, but also the glimmer of hope that he will come back being born. So
right on. I like it.
Nice.
Okay. So this next one was also from the little brother. So basically, he's like, if someone wanted to read books, because there are so many of them, now that there is a vast catalog from Legends to the Disney canon, what would we recommend for a good beginner or appetizer to the novelized mythos? What are your book recommendations to start with?
Yeah,
Zach, I'll start with you.
If anything, especially with books, especially me as a challenged reader, you got to find the thing that is going to interest you the most. So if you're into, fighter pilots, do Alphabet Squadron, because that's a really great series. Characters that are kind of in and around the original trilogy, but not really. Adjacent. We've talked about it before. Lost Stars is big on both of our tops. If you like Rebels, that first book that came out with Canon and Hera is great. If you want to go super Sithy, there's a really great book with Vader and Palpatine being stuck on a planet. Do you remember
Lords of the Sith?
Lords of the Sith, which is really cool. You find out that Palpatine's Red Guard, some of them are clones in that book, which is really cool. There's so many great books out there, but honestly, just like look up what you're interested in, because you're never going to find if you just pick up a Star Wars book, you will probably have fun with it, but it might not be what interests you. Also, anything by Claudia Gray, basically, for me, is a high recommendation. She's a great writer. The Ahsoka book, the Master and Apprentice with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon is really fantastic. If you want more Obi-Wan, young Obi-Wan stories. But yeah, those are that's me.
Yeah. Yeah, so I broke it up into separate categories for me. My real answers are for canon. The books to start with are the two books that I said were my favorites, that we pretty much agreed on.
Yeah.
If you want an easy, fun read where the only other material you need for it to make sense is Star Wars Episode 4, read Lost Stars. Read Lost Stars right now. I think, Mark, you'll have a real good time. And I think anybody would have a good time.
Yeah.
Don't shy away from the YA books of Star Wars. Oftentimes, the pacing feels more akin to the movies.
Yeah.
And the TV shows, right? And you could say it's because it's simplistic. And I'm like, right, it's a myth. But anyway, I would say Lost Stars if you want an easy, fun read. And then if you want to try a current publishing initiative, right? Try Light of the Jedi. Acolyte gets a lot of hate, whatever. If you want to give a story a go where you could dive into comics that tie into it and all kinds of other novels that also tie into it, read the beginning of it. And that was The Light of the Jedi, which is another fun, breezy, fast, just insanely fast novel that I highly recommend. So Lost Stars and Light of the Jedi are my recommendations for canon. For Legends, I recommend the original Thrawn trilogy. We talked about it last week. It's Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command. Highly recommend both of them. They are weird. They are dated. There is times that, like I've said before, Timothy Zahn gets a little into the military minutia for my tastes. But overall, it's essentially the original sequel trilogy. Right? It's Luke, Han, and Leia at the forefront in a Star Wars adventure against a new kind of enemy 5 years after Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Right? Had they made 7, 8, and 9 in the 80s, it probably would have been something like that. So if you want to dive into Legends, do that. And you can find it still published today. But, all right. So there's our recommendations for starting novels.
Yeah. Matt, what did you think of the changes made to Kanan's Order 66 origin from the comic to Bad Batch?
So if you don't know what we're talking about, this was one of the first major times that in modern canon there was a major contradiction.
Yeah.
Right? For anybody keeping score at home, the EU did this all the time. The EU, Legends, the Expanded Universe, that's everything from 1976 all the way up to, I believe it was about mid-2014 when they wiped continuity and essentially restarted. That conflicted all the time. This is one of the first times that canon majorly conflicted. In the comic book, how the Jedi Padawan Kanan Jarrus from Star Wars Rebels, how he survived Order 66, he gets surrounded by some clone troopers that basically have a crisis of conscience.
Yeah.
Huh?
They were his family too. Like,
yeah.
It sets up really.
Yeah, but they have a crisis of conscience, and they basically defeat the programming of Order 66 to let him escape. They just have a moment of like, no, we're not going to do this. And then in canon now, it's because he was surrounded by the Bad Batch, and Order 66 didn't work on the Bad Batch, and you see that in the first episode. I like both stories. I really do, so it didn't bother me super much. I was really taken aback when I saw it on the first episode. I was like, wait, what? We have not outright contradicted in canon before this moment.
Yeah.
And I've got more to say about that, but I'll save it. But so initially, I strongly disliked it.
Mm-hmm.
But Zach, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I really, I ran into it the same way because I really like that comic series. And it is such a beautiful moment of the clones, not being able to overcome it, but being able to give him a few seconds, Yeah,
yes.
And I think it's really beautiful. And I wish they would have thrown a little bit of that into Bad Batch because I have problems with Bad Batch, which we can go into another time. But yeah, I think I kind of was really upset about it, and I'm still a little upset about it. Also, Freddie Prinze Jr. should not have been voicing young Caleb Dune, because it's like he's like this big, but he has this man voice.
He kind of talks like. What's it like? You really sure you can go that fast? It's the only way I know. But it's like, it's the only way I know. Yeah. Anyway, but so to see this from 35,000 feet, right? To back up.
Yeah.
What Canon has done consistently is like shout out Force Center, another Star Wars podcast. What they kind of refer to as the emotional canon.
Yeah.
The emotional canon is consistent. It is the same. He was able to escape Order 66 because clone troopers, a group of clone troopers was able to overcome Order 66. I think they've also said you can technically have both work in canon. He escapes the Bad Batch, goes and gets on a ship, is cornered by clone troopers, and then escapes. So they can both play. But really what this comes from, in my opinion, is Dave Filoni having been trained by George, and George never gave a flying crap what was in comics and novels.
Yeah.
And so it's Filoni going, well, I'm going to tell the story that I want to tell. I disagree with that, because what we've been told since they wiped continuity was that it was all going to fit, and it was all going to work. And so now to just kind of go, I'm going to do whatever I want, I don't really like that. But then at the same time, we talked about earlier with superfan focus groups, creators need to be free to tell the story that they want to tell.
Yeah.
And I talked about before Sam Witwer's conversation with Dave Filoni that he talks about, where Dave is like, these aren't real. These are legends. Yeah. These are stories to be told around campfires. It's fine if from time to time they mildly conflict.
Yeah.
Like if there's little things that are different. And then, just to another Filoni quote where Dave was like, yeah, I mean, canon, but to me, it's always been, if you like that one story, then that's canon for you. Mm-hmm. And if you didn't like a different one, then it's not canon for you. So that's really the big takeaway. I wish it all added up perfectly, but I also know that's not possible.
Yeah.
Okay. So this next question was from someone we actually don't know in real life. This was from Super Tech Dustin.
Thank you.
So shout out. Thank you for the question, my friend. So here you go. It's an Acolyte question. Mm-hmm. In episode 1, Yord is introduced with a Padawan. She's never seen again from what I can remember. I don't remember either. I don't think.
She's not.
And basically he says, why would the council just not send him on a mission without her? Is it because he is a bumbling buffoon like Jakku seems to think? LOL. So I forgot about this character straight up. But Zach, what's your answer to this question?
I mean, they talk about it in the show even that it's the first mission that Jakku gets to go on with Master Soul. So I think it's an age thing where it's like, okay, you have a Padawan, but they're really young. You don't want to take them to a planet where you know that a Jedi might be killed. You don't want to take this untrained, basically just off of being a youngling now as a Padawan. That's not their first mission. That's not the first mission that they get to go on, except for Jakku, because she's older and she's proven herself that she, is mature and is probably towards the trial end, Jedi trials end of your Padawanship. So I think I think it's that, it's like, okay, cool. It's not the Clone Wars where Padawans are on every single mission with their master because it's war. It's okay, cool. They're a new Padawan. We're going to take them on their first mission, and then they'll learn something from it, and then they'll go back to training with the other Jedi Masters and all that. Because we even see Jakku doing lightsaber training with the Irish Jedi, the red hair, red beard.
Yeah.
So I think it's that.
Yeah, I think you did it. It was just so funny. I forgot about the character completely. Mm-hmm. My question then, from a writing perspective, I'm trying to remember from that scene why even have her there. Well, no, I answered my own question. That was dumb. The biggest reason the character existed was for you to be able to see the way Yord interacts with Osha when it's just the two of them, and the way he interacts when his Padawan steps in the room and he has to go into stoic Jedi mode, right? Because when it's just the two of them, these are friends that grew up together. They haven't seen each other in a long time. They're very warm towards each other, and then he has to go into I am bro cop, right? I am bro cop Jedi. That's what I'm going to rebrand a Yord. Bro cop Jedi. All right, but cool. Good question, Super Tech Dustin.
Yeah.
And next one, Zach.
We don't have notes on who this is from, but it's a great question.
This is from Rocky Westbrook, friend of mine from real life.
Thank you for your question. Matt, what is your favorite Star Wars musical score, and what is your favorite single track from a musical score?
I feel like I'm about to take a page out of the Paul Hyde handbook and be like, hey, guys, like how his favorite Star Wars hero is Luke, his favorite villain is Vader. I'm like, guys, sometimes you can't beat the classics.
Yeah.
Honestly, my favorite score is Star Wars Episode 4. And that sounds weird, but when if you rewatch that movie and just pay attention, it is the most symphonic Star Wars movie, in my opinion.
Yeah.
John Williams didn't know if he was going to get to do this again. He was letting it all hang out, right? There's lots of good scores. Revenge of the Sith is another great one. But to me, it's about Star Wars Episode 4, and then my favorite individual song is it's the Force theme, man. And it's been very irresponsibly used to death in the sequels. For the life of me, I cannot figure out why it is the ending moment of all 3 sequels. It's like when something shows up all the time, it no longer has any meaning. I get it for the end of Episode 7 because it wasn't always the Force theme. It was originally Ben Kenobi's theme and kind of got repurposed as Luke Skywalker's theme. Yeah. So you should see Luke Skywalker when you're hearing his theme, right? Like you did at the end of Episode 7. But I don't know, so there's my whatever. There's a rant on top of my answers. Star Wars Episode 4 and the Force theme.
Yeah. I got same. Not the Force theme.
Really?
It's one of them. But Episode 4 is the GOAT. It's what you got to do. I mean, like, yes, you have great tracks from Phantom Menace with the Duel of Fates, and then Revenge of the Sith has some great stuff, and even the sequels has some really beautiful stuff. But you don't get all of that without there is like not a bad track in Episode 4. And my favorite single track is a tie between Binary Sunset and Leia's theme. When you get the full symphonic Leia's theme, I think it's one of the most beautiful things John Williams ever wrote. It is gorgeous, especially because in the movie you don't get. I think you get like a snippet of it, but to hear the full track, I'll listen. I listen to it all the time. So.
Yeah, famously, just the way it worked in the movie, all he was able to do was ba-ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba.
Yeah.
And then for the soundtrack, he went nuts and the whole score.
Gorgeous.
And it is intended to be, Williams has said this many times, it was intended to be a love theme for Luke and Leia. Because they didn't know.
Yeah.
But then obviously when that wasn't the case, he wrote a different love theme for Han and Leia for Empire Strikes Back. And then obviously he never really got to pay off the Luke and Leia love theme, which is, for obvious reasons. But then, you didn't even get that full kind of full scored version of her theme until The Last Jedi, when she does her Mary Poppins spacewalk.
Yeah.
So,
most beautifully scored spacewalk ever.
Ever. Well, and it's funny. I'm sitting here trying to figure out. I'm planning as we're saying this. I'm like, okay, this is gonna make a really good video. That's gonna make a really good video. I can't make a video of us talking about music without putting the music in it.
Yeah, you can. You just show the scene that's in.
I guess. All right. Well, anywho.
All right.
Last question. I am excited about this one. So we'll start with you, but if you were to make a Star Wars story, which is really if you were to write a Star Wars story, what would it be? Where? What time period?
Yeah, I would take. So I've also run Star Wars RPGs, and one of my favorite stories that I wrote, for that, I would turn that into a film because it was set after Episode 3, and it was a Inquisitor story, told from the point of view of Inquisitors. So it was Inquisitors, and they had to go to this ice planet because there was a rogue Jedi left, and you were, going through, and they had basically like booby trapped the. Well, it was funny because it was. So they got there, but also Crimson Dawn got there at the same time because they were also like, oh, this Jedi could be useful to us, And then so they had to take down the Crimson Dawn. They got into the Jedi Temple. It was like slightly booby trapped. They got caught in a force room basically where they had to like come to terms with the fact that they were former Jedi and really choose the dark side, which they end up doing. Then they find the Jedi. He is being helped by these like temple acolytes, but not guards, but they're like lower level force sensitives. They get him out of there. They try and catch up to him on this ice planet, and the ghost comes in and picks him up, and it's Canon and Hera helping this Jedi get off the world. And the reason the Jedi was there was because he was building a lightsaber. He was like, I need to find my kyber crystal and build the lightsaber, and he builds it. And right as they're taking off, one of the players force succeeds, takes his lightsaber. So even though the Jedi gets away, he doesn't get his lightsaber. And then it was a beautiful story moment by one of my players. They go, "He's dead, right?" And he turns to the other Inquisitor. "We have proof that he's dead," because he knows that Vader's going to be pissed. And he's like, "No, I'm telling Vader." And then they fought and fought each other. And Vader eventually comes in, and the person who was like, "He's dead, right?" succeeds. And he blames the other Inquisitors, like he helped him get away, and I have his lightsaber. And Vader then is like, I'm going to train you more because you have proven that you're stronger than these other Inquisitors. And then it continued into a 3-episode arc, but that was like the first episode. And it was really cool. It was really great story moments, and I want an Inquisitor-led film that is better than what we saw in Kenobi. So.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, and there's or better than what we saw in the Inquisitor comic. Right? Just sidebar, another canon recommendation. If you want a good Inquisitor story, I highly, highly recommend Rise of the Red Blade.
Oh,
from
really?
earlier this year. Yes, I really, really liked that book. It's one of those that, like, every now and then this happens to me where I'm listening to an audiobook and I'm like, all right. And then it's done, and I think about it for like a week, and I'm like, wait, that was really cool. I really liked that a lot. Highly recommend that one. You get the backstory of 2 Inquisitors that showed up in the Charles Soule Darth Vader comic.
I thought that's
very,
what you were
very
going to recommend,
tragic
because
story.
that is also great.
That's also really good
stories.
stuff. Yes, but one of the better Inquisitor stories is those 2 characters. I don't want to spoil what happens to them.
Oh, is it those 2?
But it is
cool.
Very, very tragic. There are some things I will protect that you should experience. Okay, but if I was to make a Star Wars story, what would it be? Where? What period? I mean, I need to be honest. It's Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy, and it's not even a discussion. Like, there are a handful of things that I am truly baffled that Disney Canon hasn't gotten around to yet. The other 2 that stick to my mind, Darth Bane.
Ooh, you want to go
I would
back?
Yeah. Well, we have established in lore that Darth Bane is the first Sith to go, there's too many Sith.
Yeah.
We need 2. And then he kills all of them. It's not like I'm going to let him die out. He kills all of them. I want that story. Not just for the violence, but for the level of evil and intelligence and manipulation to go, not am I going to, go off and form my own sect. I'm going to kill all of them and then restart.
Yeah.
And you have your movie, and you could do it in one movie. Yeah, there's a trilogy of books, but you could get a version of it done in one movie and tie it directly into the formation of the Galactic Republic, right? And just him and his apprentice in the shadows going, and this is how we're going to win.
Yeah.
We're going to infiltrate that. And it's going to take a long time, but the Jedi are like signing their own death warrant, and they don't know that yet. The other one, speaking of going back, the first Sith.
Cool.
I would really love a first Sith story.
Yeah.
And I would really love it to be a story about how, the Jedi are using the Force, and they're established, they're around, they're all about passiveness and everything, and compassion but selflessness and all that stuff. And then they have a fight or something, and someone goes a little aggressive, and they win the fight. And he's like, well, I mean, I'm going to keep following that. And first, maybe he's the first person to invent Vapad.
Yeah.
Right? The lightsaber form that dives into the dark side. That's mostly legends, but whatever. Right? And then he starts to play with more dark sidey things, and there's other people going, hey man, you really shouldn't mess with that stuff. And he's like, why? I'm not a bad person. I'm using it for good. And they're like, hey, your skin's flaking off and your eyes are turning yellow. And he's like, no, I'm not a bad guy. Like, what are you talking about? And then he becomes corrupted by the power that he's chasing. In my mind, that's the version of that story that they should tell. That's what the first Sith would be. But, my man, it's Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy. That is the missing piece of canon.
Yeah.
And because also, we'll talk about it eventually. I've hinted many times that the characterization of Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi really bothers me and doesn't sit well. For me, it all comes back to if that guy could believe that Darth Vader was redeemable, when all Darth Vader is doing is trying to kill him and his friends and not really showing any remorse. And how does that character transition into believing that Ben Solo is irredeemable? Especially when Ben's like, I don't know what to do. I'm so conflicted. And Luke's like, no, he's gone. He's gone. There's nothing there. That's a transition that I would like to see, but also just in the different, like the Return to the Jedi. Pass on what you've learned. Go make a new Jedi Order. Obviously, we know it didn't work out, right? But I would like to see visualized the hero of the original trilogy and his attempt to restart the Jedi.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many Legends books about it, too. It's like...
Yeah, I mean, in Legends, that's basically what Legends was.
Yeah.
Is that he restarts the Jedi, and then there's so many of them, and they all go off and do a bunch of adventures and stuff. But I think that's the move. I think that's the missing piece in canon.
Yeah.
And exclusively the relationship between Ben Solo and Luke Skywalker. That is the foundation for episodes 7, 8, and 9. And I know I refuse to believe that they're never going to get there, because that wouldn't make any sense. They will tell this story eventually.
Yeah.
And I've said it before on the podcast. It's probably going to be after the Mandoverse has had its day.
Yeah.
Right? But that's the biggest. There's a lot of stories that I would tell, but that's the one that I would really love to see.
Nice.
Or tell. So there we go.
Well.
Okay, man. We did it. Look at that.
Woo.
Hour 28 minutes.
Perfect.
On the nose. We still have, believe it or not, way more mailbags to get to, but we'll parcel them out a little bit. We dumped all the mail today. But Zach, where can the people find you?
Yeah, I'm at Zachisfaction on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all the socials. But the best way to find me is to email us at forceofothersradio@gmail.com. We answered a bunch of mailbags today, and hopefully we'll answer yours soon. Matt, where can they find you?
Matt Beutner, Beutner is the last name. Good luck with your spelling. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook. I probably won't answer you. You can find me getting into fights on Twitter, but mostly that happens from our Force of Others account on Twitter. I don't get into fights, but I just call out people when they're being mean. But just interact with us. whether it's through our email or Instagram comments, YouTube comments, like, comment, subscribe, do all the stuff. We want to get you, I'm talking to you watching this video right now or listening to us, we want to get you involved.
Yeah.
Subscribe to the podcast, do all the things, and we want this to be a safe haven for fair, honest, but dare I say positive Star Wars content. Because, hey, Zach, I just want to make sure I'm not wrong. Star Wars is kind of fun, right?
I love it.
Wow. Weird. Hot takes. We do, in fact, love Star Wars. All right. And so, friends and neighbors, and remember, the force of others will be with you.
Always. The Force of Others, a Star Wars podcast.